Hey everybody, this is Kimberly and you're watching Thriving on a Budget. Sorry my eyes are in a weird spot. I'm actually trying to turn my phone the opposite direction so you guys can actually see everything I've noticed. I've been having the camera up and down. So forgive me, I know the camera's down here. I'm actually looking at the screen. So, okay, I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about a couple of different things. One of which is cheap protein and how to make cheap protein like beans taste better. Reusing items and not being wasteful of things, and just kind of a little bit of everything. I'm just going to kind of talk. So hopefully this is helpful to somebody. But yeah, so one of the things I wanted to talk about today was things like beans and lentils. A lot of the stores, people have gone a little crazy. And so some stores are having a hard time keeping meat in, as well as the fact that because things are so unpredictable right now, it's nice to have bulk cheap proteins if you have a lot of beans or lentils on hand. It's just nice to know that you have enough for a while so you can feed your family for longer. So I'm just going to teach you guys how to make those taste a little bit better, because if you're just getting beans right out of the can, they either taste not really much like anything or they're just super salty and don't really have much of flavor past that. So we're going to talk about that. First of all, you got to think about if you're using canned beans or dried beans. If you're using dry beans, make sure that you soak them overnight before you cook them. If you try to cook them immediately, instead of soaking them, you need to soak them. It's so much harder to cook them all the way through, and they won't be a normal texture that you'll want to eat. They'll be like little hard rocks, little nuts, whatever. It's a weird texture. So you will want to soak dry beans overnight. So plan for that. So if you're planning on making something with beans tomorrow and all you have is dry beans, make sure that you are soaking them. Canned beans you can obviously cook with immediately, just kind of drain the liquid and add flavoring and whatnot. So first of all, you're going to want a more savory, substantial flavor. So one of the things I have always preached about people having in their food storage is bouillon. So you obviously can get one of the bigger containers, but if you're trying to make your money stretch, I know a lot of people are getting laid off, which is really scary. This is like 99 cents. You can pick this up at most grocery stores for about $1, or they do also have bouillon at the dollar store a lot of the time. So this has 8 cubes in it. So each cube you add with a cup of water, and that equals a cup of broth. So this can actually equal broth for a handful of meals. So you'll have your beans, and then your next thing is you want broth to cook it in, just because it's going to infuse your beans or lentils with so much flavor, and it'll make it just way yummier and more desirable that way. So you want this. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to try and maneuver this so you can see the stuff that's on the table next to me. So I did 2 different bean and lentil dishes, so I did them a little bit different, and I'll explain. These are obviously very customizable depending on what you actually have on hand. So this first one, if you can see what's going on over here, I have a crock pot. Can you see that? You can't see it, sorry. I'm not the best camera person, but that's kind of more of like a bean soup, and it pairs really well with bread. So that's, when you're going to have definitely a bouillon or broth base. If you have chicken broth that's not bouillon, use that. And then, so this is like my favorite bean recipe ever. And if you make it brothier, it turns into more of a soup rather than refried beans. So, okay. And like I said, you customize it based off what you have on hand. So you have your broth base, and then you'll want things like garlic and onion, black pepper, and then if you have other things, you can obviously kind of spice it up or dress it up more. But if you just have the minimum, literally if all you have is chicken broth, that's fine. That's going to make your beans still taste really good. If you have a lot of spices, I definitely would encourage cumin, or if you have taco seasoning, that will make your beans super good too. And so I know that things are just, like I said, super crazy, and some people haven't really prepared or don't necessarily have a lot of stuff in their kitchen to begin with. So you might be like, hey, do you know what? I'm super tight right now. What I have in my kitchen is what I have in my kitchen, and I get that. Sorry, I have really weird lighting right now. That was kind of dreary looking lighting. That's better. So no, I get it. So if you don't have a lot of seasoning and you are just trying to make it work and things are super unpredictable, guess where is an unlikely place you would have thought of where you would have broth seasoning? Most people have one of these in their house, at least. So what you can do is actually take the seasoning packet out to make a broth to actually infuse flavor in your beans, because you're going to need that fiber and that protein, just because it's just basically a way to make a really important nutrient taste better. And then with the noodles, you can technically pair that with the beans if you wanted to, but you can save the noodles for another meal. I know a lot of stores, noodles were selling out like crazy. So that's one of the things, like sometimes you have to be creative with what you have on hand. If you've ever seen that show, Cutthroat Kitchen, super fun show. It's on YouTube. It helps you kind of think of ways to think outside the box with your cooking. So if this is what you have, seriously, like make sure that you're having palatable, yummy food, but also use what you have. So you can take the spice packet out of this, make broth with it, and cook down those beans so they're getting infused with flavor. And then these noodles, you can use an entirely different meal. If you have spaghetti sauce or just like oil and black pepper or some tomatoes, like canned tomatoes or whatever, like think of what you have and you can definitely break things up. There's no rule that top ramen has to stay together as a kit. There's no rule that a mac and cheese kit has to stay together. You can break things up and use them independently if that is a need to be able to have the kinds of meals that you want. That's an option. Okay, so the other lentil-y bean meal, so that, like I said, that one was more of a soup. The other one, if you can see this, how well you can see that. Okay, so it's a vegetarian taco filling that I made, and it's so tasty. So the other one was more of like a broth base. This one, you start off with like tomatoey base. So you can start off with like canned tomatoes or tomato soup, and you add lentils. I had dry lentils. And then I just added water so they'd have time to simmer down and to cook thoroughly. So you can just keep, adding liquid until it, cooks down until those lentils are fully cooked. Lentils, you do not have to soak overnight. They're small enough that, they're dry, but you can cook them on the stove. Just straight out of the package. It might take a little while, but it's fine. So tomato base, lentils, you can yet again add bouillon or ramen seasoning or whatever if you want more of that kind of robust, savory flavor to go with it. Yet again, cumin, taco seasoning, black pepper, garlic. Think of the things you have on hand. Like I'm trying to keep this a little bit open-ended because I don't know what you have on hand and I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of an idea. I can read you my recipe for beans, but I actually have that in another video of mine. Those are things to think about, is making your cheap protein taste better. Another thing is making sure you're not being wasteful of things. So I had a bunch of red onion in my fridge, and I'd used it for 1 or 2 meals and I still just had a lot of it, and it was already pre-chopped and everything, and I didn't want it to go bad. And so I actually pickled some red onion. I have another video on here about how to do easy fridge pickles. And so you can do that with onion, you can do that with cabbage, you can do that with cucumbers, obviously. There's another video on here. If you look up I think I did like pumpkin bread and easy pickles on that one. So if you have produce in your fridge, like make sure that you're using things and that you're not letting things go to waste. So ask yourself, is it something that you can preserve or is it something that you can freeze? So if you have things like berries, those freeze fine, and then later you can turn them into jam or whatever you want. Apples. Okay, if your family's going to eat up those apples are pretty hardy for a while. If they're not going to eat them fast enough, you can slice them up and freeze them and like make pie or jam with them later. Or you can just cook them down in your crock pot and turn them into apple butter. And so it's something to think about. Like I said, so this is not a water bath can preserve. This is just meant for the fridge. And I also have freezer jars for ones when I do in the freezer. If you have sealing lids and you're someone that knows how to can, that's another option. I do know how to can. It's just right now I don't have sealing lids. I don't have that, so I'm utilizing what I do have. Another thing to think about is, yet again, think of nutrients that you're going to need in your food and how to make the most of what you have right now. I'm planning on starting a garden pretty soon. One of the easiest things that you can grow, even if you do not have a green thumb, because I don't, is if you get green onion at the grocery store, what you can do is you obviously, like, you can use this up. You can even like pre-chop it and put it in your fridge. You want to keep these roots at the bottom. These are important. Put them in a glass of water or a mug of water, and you can keep them on your stove or on your table or something, and they will regrow. You can regrow green onions, and as long as you're tending to it, you can keep growing green onions for like ever. And so what you want to do is, like I said, keep those roots in some water, and it will grow. And you want to probably replace the water. I would say every day, but it depends, just make sure that it's not molding. It's, kind of rinse it out and put fresh water. And that's a way that you can have greens in your house and constantly. We're trying to figure out how to make the most of the food that we have. Avoid stores if we don't have to, as well as financial planning, which I've talked to you guys about before, is there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So make sure that you're being smart with your money. There's an app that I'm a really big fan of. It's called Every Dollar by Dave Ramsey. So if your family is in one of those situations where maybe somebody got temporarily laid off or whatever's going on, since nobody's leaving their houses except for like grocery store workers and hospital workers and a couple businesses that are still open, but it's like, not supposed to be in groups bigger than 10 people. So if you're in those situations where you just don't know how much longer financially you can hold on, definitely make sure you're aware of where your money is going. So the Every Dollar app by Dave Ramsey, it does not hook to your accounts. If you're someone like me where it's like, I don't want anyone touching my account, you just plug in what your paycheck is, and then you plug in what every single bill is, as well as every time you spend money on groceries and everything, so you're aware of where that money's going. So just things to think about, guys. Making your food last, making sure that you are making things taste good, and considering nutrient-dense food. If you are planning on gardening like I am, a way to improve your soil. If you're someone who drinks coffee, you can obviously use used coffee grounds. I am not someone who drinks coffee. I was at the grocery store earlier this morning when there was less people there, just to make sure I got a couple more things my family needed. And there happens to be a Starbucks connected to my grocery store. They had a sign saying they had free coffee grounds. So basically when they have used coffee grounds, they collect them in bags, and they, if you want them, you say, hey, can I have some free grounds for my garden? They don't care. They're trying to get rid of them anyway. So I got like 3 bags of coffee grounds for my garden, and that just, they have a lot of nutrients that are really good for your soil. So just make sure that you're kind of thinking outside the box, not wasting things. Have the kind of mentality that, like, your grandmother or great grandmother had, that things are not going to waste. You are eating your leftovers. You're repurposing things, and make sure you're being smart with your money and your planning, because we don't know how long we're going to have to ride this out for. I hope everybody is being safe. I love you guys, and take care. Hope this wasn't too serious. I am planning on doing more of these. And like I said, we're going to have a really fun taste test video coming up. So hopefully that will be really fun. I love you guys, and I hope you have a good night. Okay? Bye-bye.